Why is it that foods in Europe are so different from the United States? Even the exact same type of food can be monumentally different in Europe than it is in the United States. I've got 13 of the main reasons why, in no particular order, and I'm sure there are more. But it's interesting because people in the US will travel to Europe and they'll say, I ate bread, I ate pasta, I ate this and that, and I actually felt better. And my body even looked better. And I was eating more of this delicious food. So what is it that truly makes it different? After today's video, I put a link down below for our video sponsor, which is Seed. If you're making a change to your diet, I do recommend a good symbiotic like Seed. It is what is called a symbiotic because it has a prebiotic and a probiotic in one capsule. So that is a 25% off discount link to try them out. So 25% off a daily symbiotic, which is a capsule in a capsule tech. So what that means is you have a multi-stage delivery of the prebiotics and the probiotics. They publish a lot of their own clinical trials, their own research, actually looking at how different strains of bacteria do different things. And it's one of those things where if you're making a change to your diet, it is one of the first things that makes the most sense to focus on your gut. Because as we're going to learn a lot of stuff today, talking about the difference between Europe and America and the food, a lot of it does come down to the gut as well, which is quite interesting. So check them out. And a big thank you to them for offering up a 25% discount to anyone that's watching this video. So that link down below. I'm going to lead off with the most interesting one because this is just super wild. If you look at McDonald's French fries in the United States compared to McDonald's French fries in Europe, the same French fries are totally different. And it just gives context to like how the same food can be totally different based on additives. In the United Kingdom, here's what McDonald's French fries have in them: potatoes, oil, dextrose, and salt. Good? I mean, not great, but definitely not that bad. 4 ingredients. Same French fries from McDonald's in the United States: potatoes, partially hydrogenated soybean oil or other oils. So you've got trans fats added into the mix. You've got the dextrose, you've got the salt, but then you've got some other things added in. First off, you've got beef flavoring added because potatoes wouldn't be potatoes unless they tasted like beef. So you're adding some flavoring into the mix. Then you've got sodium acid pyrophosphate, just a regular preservative to, do some other things and preserve them a little bit more, maybe enhance the flavor. And then you've got anti-foaming agents, the same literal anti-foaming agents that are in silly putty. Okay, because you need your potatoes to have anti-foaming agents so that it doesn't, foam over and they can turn over more French fries in a faster amount of time. Same franchise organization, same item on the menu, largely different product, right? So I don't have a problem with potatoes. I don't really have a problem with natural oils. I don't have a problem with dextrose to a certain degree. I don't have a problem with salt, but I do have a problem with how it's combined with other things. And that's just one example. So let's move into the next one, which is number 2, which is less preservatives. Now, you're probably wondering before I get into the preservatives, like where gluten comes into the equation and all this, because a lot of people talk about gluten. I've saved the gluten discussion for last because that one is very interesting. Let's talk about preservatives here real quick. And this comes down to regulatory policy in the US versus Europe. In the US, there's this thing called GRAS, generally recognized as safe. Now, because of the GRAS designation, a lot of things slip through the cracks. It allows the streamlining of things to get to market because they've been blanketed under the category of generally recognized as safe. So basically, you don't need as much pre-market approval to get a product in the US, which is a little scary given the nature of all the things that are out there. In Europe, you find that there is a lot more scrutiny in what can actually hit the shelves in the first place. Number 3 is there's less food marketing in the first place. Like for example, in the United Kingdom, they strictly regulate food marketing before 9 p.m. on TV and online. And that's to reduce the risk of kids soaking up a lot of junk food marketing because there's pretty strong correlations between the amount of advertisements that we see for food and consumption. As a matter of fact, there was a study published in Obesity Reviews that looked at this with children and adolescents. They found there was a direct relationship between how obese a child was or a group of children were and how much advertisement they were exposed to through TV. Number 4 is a very interesting one, and that's raw dairy. In Europe, they consume a lot of raw milk, raw cheeses, raw kefir, raw yogurt. The dairy is largely raw because it's not heavily regulated. In the United States, it is regulated. And I understand why, because when you're getting out to the masses, you pasteurize it, you make it a little bit safer as far as microbes are concerned. Bacteria, yes, I totally get it. The downside is that there's a lot of benefit to raw dairy. Okay, you have a lot of microbial effects, which really do add benefit. So you're getting microbially active, almost probiotic, fermented type dairy, which has big benefits on the gut in the first place. Now, that's one of the reasons why you can go over to Europe and possibly have dairy and not have as much of an issue as you might have if you have dairy in the United States. You're basically not just drinking sugar water, that's milk sugar water, you're drinking something that is nourishing and has some nutritional value to it. Number 5 is foods are simply more local. Okay, if you look at the geography of Europe, it's more densely populated, less land mass, so flat out the supply chain is smoother and shorter. So it's easier to have more local type foods. There's also just a simple demand for it. The culture in Europe is more about eating local, whereas in the United States, we do kind of bring things in from all over the place, and you have a difficult place to get to. Like if you look at the United States, it is a very isolated region at the end of the day. We have our own, so we try to do what we can to grow it all in place because to get things to the United States, it's coming from a large area, large bodies of water. So it's a largely isolated area compared to Europe and Asia. Then we have number 6, which is smaller portions. There was a study published in Foods that looked at almost 1,400 subjects, and they showed them images of food and pictures of food and whatnot. And they found that when they showed them chicken, ice cream, and beverages, by and large, the United States seemed to have visually the largest portions, whereas France had the smallest portions, but much of Europe having overall mostly small portions. So the US was significantly larger portion sizes. So you go to a restaurant in Europe, the food quality is probably better, but then you're also just not getting served as much and you may not even realize it. Number 7, the bread making culture is different in the first place. In the United States, it's about getting bread out there because it's filler. It's filler and we can pump out as much as we possibly can. Let's preserve it. Let's put it on the shelves. In Europe, there is a demand for fresh bread. And this is what's interesting is because, in Europe, they eat a lot of bread, yet largely they're metabolically more healthy than us. And I guess a lot of the reason is there's the demand for fresh bread. And this goes back centuries. When there's a demand for fresh bread, they want to eat it the same day. There is something unique about having bread that was just baked that day. It tastes entirely different. So they're not loading it with preservatives and sugar. They're just making it with simple ingredients and then it's consumed that day. And say what you want about bread, it's not that calorically dense. So if people are consuming good quality bread that doesn't have preservatives, they're probably just by simple displacement eating less junk food. Number 8 is coffee. Coffee is different in a few ways. The roasting is different, the additives are different, and the flavoring is different. In the United States, we roast our coffee medium to dark. That's generally how we like it. In Europe, it's generally roasted from light to medium, which does one really important thing. It increases the caffeine content. Okay, that is true, but that's not the important piece. The important piece is it preserves the antioxidants. Coffee is one of the more potent antioxidants that we probably consume in this world, believe it or not. It is highly powerful as an antioxidant. When you roast it lightly, you preserve those antioxidants. When you cook the hell out of it, you denature them. And you also increase something called acrylamide, which is a potential carcinogen and not good. And then in the United States, we add more flavorings. We make it like French vanilla flavor. We add preservatives. It goes on and on and on. But additionally, in the United States, coffee is usually a 500 calorie drink from Starbucks, whereas in Europe, just the general consumption of coffee is a little bit different. There's all kinds of high caloric, calorically dense drinks that have coffee in them, but they're usually, once again, they're made with a little bit more wholesome ingredients. Number 9 is kind of an easy one. Just because, again, the geography and just the nature of the kinds of foods, there's a lot more fresh herbs. And that does have a benefit there. Like you're flavoring and enhancing things with herbs versus natural flavorings. So it's much more in the culture to just use what is available to you. This is really wild. Yes, there is less fast food, and there's less interest in fast food. In fact, there was a study published in the journal Appetite that took a look at the US versus Spain. Okay, 61% of college kids in the United States said that their main priority with food is the value. How much food can I get for value? 60% of Spanish kids, college kids, said that the most important thing to them was nutrient quality and nourishment. So here we have a flat out change or a difference in how they look at food. 18% of United States college kids opposed the growth of fast food. 18% said, no, this shouldn't grow anymore. 49% of Spanish college kids opposed the growth and proliferation of fast food restaurants. They are raised to realize that food quality matters and that we don't need this garbage. Number 11 is the heritage livestock breeds and the demand for that. So there is a demand for proper lineage with the livestock. Like, they want these heritage breeds rather than just how much can we produce and getting volume. There is an actual demand for, okay, what is this actual heritage? What is this lineage so that we can look and get the highest quality meat possible that is also ethically sound, more diverse in many ways, but also more sustainable. Number 12 is the grain harvesting is extremely different. It's very, very different. There are actual field management practices. There's something called the Common Agricultural Policy, which focuses on like sustainability, focuses on biodiversity. So it encourages the rotation of crops. It encourages the proper movement, the proper soil turnover, so that you're getting soil enrichment, so that you're moving things, so that you maintain soil quality. This is just one example. Whereas in the United States, it's much more about mass production, volume, sort of mono agriculture, where we can just grow as much of one particular crop as we can for the masses. And again, it makes sense given the geography why we would do that. But in Europe, it's much more about, okay, how do we recycle, use what we use locally, and there you go. Not to mention there's also a lot tighter regulations on pesticides and herbicides. So when you do get like good organic farming, it's very, very good and clean. Not to mention there are government incentives to encourage organic farming, government incentives to help subsidize good local food. Okay, finally, number 13, let's talk gluten for a second. The actual wheat has less gliadin in it. Gliadin is the protein that is in gluten. So when you have less gliadin, you have less of the problematic protein that's in gluten. So gliadin increases what is called zonulin levels. Zonulin is a protein which activates or makes the gut more permeable. When the gut is more permeable, then you have what are called gram-negative bacteria or lipopolysaccharides leak through into the bloodstream, initiating an immune response. In people with celiac, this is why this triggers a cascade of problems from an immunological perspective. In a regular person, it can possibly happen at varying degrees, up for debate on how it does it with what extreme. But the bottom line is that it is different in the United States than it is in Europe. In the United States, we have very little sulfur in our soil because it's not rotated properly. In Europe, sulfur levels are higher. Okay, the more sulfur, the less gliadin. And that is a pretty much agricultural fact. Okay, so you have less gliadin, less of this reactive protein that triggers potential issues in the gut. So that's why you can go to Europe and enjoy some bread and not have as much of a problem with it. Now we also have the glyphosate discussion, but to be completely fair here, most of the evidence goes down to the soil. And that's the biggest piece that we can look at here as to why bread and wheat is so different in Europe. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel, and I'll see you tomorrow.